In the ruthless game of power, what do you think the greatest danger is? It's not being attacked. It's not even being slandered. No, the single worst fate, the one that absolutely guarantees your irrelevance, is being ignored. Today, we're going to dissect a really provocative and crucial principle from the 48 Laws of Power. Law 6, court attention at all costs.
So before we can even get into the law itself, we have to really grasp the fundamental fear it's built on. Think about it. To be unseen is to be powerless. If you just blend in with the masses, you're basically buried in oblivion, and all your talents, all your ambitions, well, they just count for nothing. This quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of the law's brutal logic, doesn't it? An attack, even a really nasty one, means you're important enough to be a target. It means you're taking up space in other people's minds. But being ignored? That means you don't even register. You're just a ghost in the machine. The big takeaway here is that failing to stand out means you might as well not exist. Your merits, your hard work, your brilliance, none of it matters if nobody sees it. And that's where Law 6 comes in. It's presented as the necessary antidote to this social death sentence. Okay, so how does this fear translate into the actual law? I mean, what does it really mean to court attention, and what's the psychological secret sauce that makes the strategy so incredibly effective? So here is the law, stated loud and clear. It operates on a really simple, unwavering premise. Perception is reality. You can't ever let yourself get lost in the crowd or fade into the background. You have to stand out. You have to be conspicuous at all costs. Let's dig into the psychology behind this for a second. You know, we are just hardwired to notice the unusual. We're drawn to figures who seem bigger, more vibrant, and way more mysterious than everyone else. Think about it. Society doesn't celebrate the bland and timid. It craves these larger-than-life characters. This law is all about becoming one of them. And this right here, this is probably the most radical and misunderstood part of the whole law. It doesn't seem to care if the attention is positive or negative, but there's a nuance here. It's not that any old attention will do. It's that all attention is a tool. Controversy, scandal, even slander, they all serve the same primary purpose, keeping you in the public eye and far away from the shadows of oblivion. So to really see how this works in practice, let's take a look at a few masters who didn't just understand this law, they basically lived and breathed it. First up, the great showman, P.T. Barnum. He just knew that attention creates its own kind of legitimacy. The second people's eyes are on you, you matter. So he would do anything different or odd, just to draw a crowd, because he knew that crowds are like magnets for the unusual. This quote just brilliantly illustrates his core philosophy. It didn't matter why they gathered. A crowd was an asset, a resource you could leverage. Once you have their attention, you can never, ever let it go. You know, Barnum never complained about bad press or personal attacks. In fact, sometimes he started them himself. He understood that just being talked about for any reason was the fuel for his entire empire. As long as the controversy made him look like this master showman of the bizarre and spectacular, it was a win. For him, fame and power were impossible without constant, managed attention. Now let's switch gears and look at another master of attention, Pablo Picasso. His method was totally different, but just as effective. He was at war with predictability. Just when the public and the critics thought they finally had him figured out, he would deliberately shock them with something completely new. For Picasso, the answer to that question was a resounding yes. He knew that people start to feel superior to anyone whose actions they can predict. By constantly messing with their expectations, he stayed in control, he commanded respect, and he tightened his grip on the public's very fleeting attention. Both Barnum and Picasso also tapped into this really powerful tool by building this enigmatic persona, by not saying too much about your work, by being hard to pin down. You force other people into the weaker position of trying to figure you out. That aura of mystery just draws people in and makes them pay constant attention. So all of this sounds incredibly powerful, but it's a dangerous game. Seriously, applying this law requires huge skill and awareness. Let's look at the very fine line between doing it artfully and just self-destructing. This slide highlights a crucial contrast. So on one side, you have the artful attention seeker. They use mystery to seem profound, not to be deceptive. They're always changing their methods so they never become a predictable caricature. Think of a CEO who sometimes makes bold public moves, but other times is completely silent. It keeps everyone guessing. The key is to always seem like you're in control, not desperate. The goal is to be an artist of attention, not a slave to it. And this brings us to a fatal mistake: appearing way too greedy for attention. It just screams insecurity, which is the complete opposite of power. The moment you seem desperate for validation, you're not leading the story anymore. You're just begging for a part in it. And that neediness repels the very influence you're trying to attract.
Which brings us to the reversal of the law, a really critical pivot in strategy. Look, at the start of your rise, you have to attract attention, maybe at all costs. But as you get more established, the game totally changes. Your goal isn't just to be seen anymore. It's to be respected and to secure your position. Sometimes, pulling back from the spotlight is way more powerful. It makes your appearances more impactful, and most importantly, when you're around your superiors, you can never compete for their attention or outshine them. Let them have the spotlight. It makes you look graceful and secure, not like a threat.
So we come back then to the law's really stark, unwavering philosophy. It just strips away all the sentiment and leaves us with a cold, hard calculation about the nature of social power.
And this illustrates the ultimate lesson of Law 6. It doesn't matter how talented you are, how hard you work, or how noble your intentions are. In the end, what is unseen simply counts for nothing. So the question this law leaves us with is not whether this is fair, but rather, what are you going to do to ensure you are seen?